students in your school, or are they pretty consistent?
Can you say that one more time?
Is there very much turnover for your staff or for students in your school?
The students themselves do move a lot.
Okay.
And we're a neighborhood school, so technically we're only supposed to be a school for children in the neighborhood. We do have students who go to us that technically shouldn't, but I think there's space around that because they have better students, they continue to come. And our school wants that because they want the numbers.
Right.
They want the kids to stay. I think there's turnover definitely with, like, younger teachers. So, you know, people get pregnant or people moving. I think, you know, yeah, I think it's maybe like 50-50. It's like 50 are like here to stay till they retire, and then 50 are, you know, moving grade levels or moving out of town and leaving, and different positions being open all the time. And then same with the kids. There's some kids in my 8th grade that have been in the same class together since preschool, and then there's, you know, the newcomers that came in a month ago.
Okay.
And it's very much like the ones that move a lot. So, like, I have one kid, I think he's been to 5 schools in 2 or 3 years, so he moves a ton.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So I know you definitely mentioned stress when you talked about the difference between this year and last year. I just don't want to move on without asking you if there are other major sources of stress that you've experienced as a teacher that maybe weren't characterized in that story. So have there been other major sources of stress that you've had as a teacher?
I think there are a lot of pieces. I think one is trying to juggle 50 jobs at once. Like, if you're a teacher, you know that you're not just a teacher, but you're like a parent, and you're a counselor, and you're a psychologist, and trying to, you know, wear all these different hats is exhausting. I think, too, with our population, our kids are dealing with a lot. I mean, they're dealing with things that I did not have to deal with when I was 13. You know, they're dealing with drug use at home, and they're dealing with, like, some of our kids are having sex, and they're dealing with, you know, absent fathers, or, you know, we have this year, like, a very abusive alcoholic dad. And so I think I feel a lot of times where I'm just like, I don't know how to deal with this because I'm not a trained counselor, and I'm, you know, trying to refer them to the appropriate places. And like we have one school counselor, and so she's one school counselor for, you know, 800 kids. And we used to have a dean, and we don't even have a dean anymore because she had to fill a classroom position that someone had been let go. And I also, like I said, I really enjoy my administration, but a lot of times it's very much communicated, like, deal with things on your own. So, like, last year we had a student that was harassing a lot of teachers through email and in person, and we were basically told just kind of deal with it. I mean, we were told, like, you need to document and blah, 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 but it's very much like, we don't want to deal with this, so you deal with it. So that, I think, is one of the biggest stressors. And then I think, you know, me as a teacher, I know my kid who, you know, whose dad was drunk the other night and was hitting his mom, I know he didn't do his homework. And so trying to figure out, how can I make you care about fractions, you know, when that's like the least, you know, farthest thing from your mind. So that is a big stressor. I think just because of getting an opportunity to talk about being a teacher, I think another stressor for me is like maybe the support that I feel, or lack of support from peers or people who just don't really get what it means to be a teacher. So, like, I can talk to my colleagues and I can share these horrible stories about my kids with my friends, but they don't really get it. And it's also like, when we've all been in the workforce for 6 or 7 years and, it's like a money thing. So a status thing. I know a lot of my friends were making like, 6 figures and, or I think are getting promotions. And, that doesn't really happen when you're a teacher. So, navigating like these different professional paths that we've taken. So, and I think too, like the time. So it's weird that as a teacher you are technically, on the clock from 8 to 3, and that's what you're paid for. And I feel like this constant internal struggle of like, when I'm hanging out with my daughter, I feel like I should be grading these tests, and then when I'm grading these tests, I'm like, oh, I should have been hanging out with my daughter, and like, being pulled in all these different directions is really stressful. But I think maybe as you go along, you get a little more perspective. Like, I really try to leave work at work, which is a really big struggle for me. But with some of these kids, I've wanted to just like take them home with me. I had a kid ask me to adopt him one time. He was living in like a group home, and I was like, oh my God, like, how do you answer that question? And I was just thinking about him and his home life constantly, and it sounds really hard, but it helps to kind of think, okay, I'm going to give him all the love and support that I can at school, and then I'm going to go home and try to live my own life, I guess, which is, because that's really all you can do. So just doing what I can do when I'm at my building and my kids are in front of me helps a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
We also do this thing called Palm Classroom. I don't know if you've ever heard of Palm Classroom, but it's a way it's like 3 minutes, and we do it 2 to 3 times a day, and it's a way to help us manage transitions. So it's like sort of like meditation, but the kids think about their breathing, and it's like stretching, and I think that has really helped, not just in terms of management, but it's helped also me to take a second and take some deep breaths and just kind of jump into the lesson that I had for the day. So taking like little breaks, and I don't do this anymore because I want to get home to my daughter, but what I used to do is I always work through my lunch. But last year when I was having such a hard year, my colleague was like, you know what, we're not going to work at lunch, and we're going to sit and talk. So we had lunch together every day, and that was really nice to have that space and that personal connection. It made me feel like a little more refreshed to kind of jump back into things, because you can drown really quickly.
Yeah. You already started, I mean, those 2 examples are very clear examples of kind of supports or resources that you used at school to deal with, what some people might call the trauma that your students, or the stress that your school brings. Are there other supports, resources, or training that your school has provided you to help meet the needs of your students who are struggling with some of the challenges that you mentioned?
Not really. And I think that's actually a huge negative of our school, is there's really no professional development in terms of teaching practice or really how to meet the best needs of our kids. I think there could be a lot more done in terms of we're evaluated on how effectively we communicate with parents, but we're not provided ideas. And that's the other thing. Like, I know teachers are doing really cool things in their classrooms, but it's not shared. And especially because of the population we're dealing with, I feel like it's just like, talk to the counselor if you need help. But I think it could be more organized. How are you dealing with X, Y, Z, and learning from each other, because otherwise it's like, try the best you can, but otherwise that's all we can do. Right.
What ideally do you think that school or the district should be doing to support teachers with and support you with meeting the needs of your students?
I think there needs to be just more high quality PD. And I guess that's kind of what my role is as the framework specialist, is trying to get that PD. But what's hard is we have this really great material, and it's online, and we offer free sessions, but it's getting the right people